Governor David Paterson on his last visit to the New York State Fair as governor. Governor, give me some sense of how that feels to be doing things for the last time this year as governor.
Well, as arduous as some of the days have gone, the time has actually gone very quickly. But I think I'll remember that it was the highest privilege of my life to serve as governor of the state of New York. Didn't exactly get much notification for it, but I think in the end, we had to cut $43 billion off of the deficit that the state has. You're never going to be popular when you do that, but I think when people risk a second glance a few years from now, we will come out of the recovery more quickly than many other states that were hurt a lot more than New York was.
You spoke to us a couple of weeks ago, and you were talking about the fact that you were thinking about things that you might be able to do in these final months as governor that would not require action by the legislature, things you could do by executive order. Have you focused more on that in recent days, and have you come up with any ideas of what you might be doing?
Well, they're in kind of the formative stage, but we're sort of looking at the possibility of expanding the roles of, in terms of cleaning up corruption in state government, the roles of some of the public servants that would be involved in that process. We're still looking at economic development opportunities for the state. We would really like to bring a few more businesses into the state before we go. And we'll be coming up on my last 100 days. And so where most public servants are measured, in effect, after their first 100 days, I think I'd like to have an ambitious project for my last 100 days before I go out of office.
Okay. We've been talking today here on the fairgrounds about a major issue here in upstate New York in the coming days, the September 1st deadline for an imposition of the state excise tax on cigarettes at the distributor level, which is supposed to tax those major brands before they get to Indian lands and are sold to New Yorkers. We're already hearing from various Indian nations in the upstate area about their plans to begin to produce their own cigarettes on their own land as a way of perhaps getting around that excise tax. Is there anything the state can do to prevent that?
We can't do anything on sovereign property where the nations live, but that's not been our problem. Our problem is when they try to sell national brand cigarettes, the cigarettes that New Yorkers overwhelmingly smoke, without the tax, which creates an unfair advantages with business owners that live right here in New York State. That will be stopped as of September 1st. The legislature passed the bill. I signed it. We're not pushing the deadline back. We will negotiate with the nations, if they like, to work out a way in which we can live in peaceful coexistence. But the reality is that we're going to enforce the law at that point. They're moving a lot of their manufacturers onto their land, and as long as the cigarettes that they produce stay on their land, then it will not interfere with the competitive equality that New York small business owners will have.
There's been discussion in recent days by, again, the Indian nations and supporters about the comments from Mayor Bloomberg, who said, in effect, you should dress like a cowboy, go out with a shotgun and enforce the law on Indian lands. When you heard that comment, I'm wondering what went through your mind, and is it just an example that the mayor doesn't understand the situation upstate?
Well, I think it was most unfortunate, and I also think that you don't want to raise the tension. As you know, Bill, over the past few decades, there have been some violent confrontations on Indian nation property in conflict with New York State's government. We're not going on New York State's property right now, so there should be no reason that anybody would be advocating, that kind of scenario, such as what was described, particularly when they have nothing to do with the enforcement. New York State's police don't need to have their safety jeopardized. New York State's citizens here in central New York don't have to have their safety jeopardized. We don't need to raise the anxiety on what is a situation that should be handled without any threat or out any safety violations. One of the reasons that the Indians are moving their manufacturers onto their land is because they know that New York State's land is going to tax every cigarette that we sell or see. And so that's how we're going to address it, and hopefully people outside the jurisdiction will respect what we're trying to do.
Just two final areas I want to touch on. First, the issue that's arisen this year over the World Trade Center and the development of an Islamic center nearby, a mosque. We've seen so much discussion of that in recent days. I'm wondering whether you're concerned that in this political season, have you seen groups trying to use this as a wedge issue to simply gain votes in November?
It's unfair to the families of those who perished in 9/11. It's unfair to the people who have to live in that area for their safety and their tranquility to be invaded by the political process or self-promoting people who are trying to get attention. But I'm hoping that people on both sides of the issue will dialogue in a constructive way. And I have an open invitation to the developers to perhaps discuss some way to limit the anxiety and the frustration that people who live near Ground Zero and those who lost at Ground Zero can appreciate.
And just a final question, that has to do with one of your major legislative goals, also being supported by Andrew Cuomo in recent days, and that is a property tax cap. A legislature is coming back this year in September. What realistically are the chances that they'll enact a tax cap, even take up the tax cap?
I never know what the chances are, but I'm going to put it on the special session calendar. And I know they're coming back in September, but I'm going to make them come back right before the election so we can call the roll on who wants to have a property tax cap here in this state. If people want to vote against it, they should vote against it. But I think that an issue this controversial that 80% of New Yorkers support should at least be voted on up or down. That's what they did in New Jersey, and it wasn't even close. They got a property tax cap in New Jersey. We can do the same thing here in New York. But the legislative process should not be used to stagnate what the people want. It should be used to hold referendum on it, and I'm insisting that that vote be held in the Senate and the Assembly for the end of the year.
So there will be a vote, and it will come before Election Day.
Well, I think the voters deserve to see either where their elected officials stand or where they won't stand at all.
Okay. Governor David Paterson joining us here at the New York State Fair.